Radio 4, it's 7 o'clock and time to join Andy Crane in the Cat's Whiskers studio.
Good evening and welcome to Cat's Whiskers once again. An awful lot this week of photographs and picture postcards in the mailbag, so we'll get straight to your letters. The first one comes from eagle-eyed Andrew Tiller, who lives in Stourbridge in the West Midlands. I say eagle-eyed because he sent us a photograph of himself in his Cat's Whiskers t-shirt standing outside a shop called the Cat's Whiskers. That's a great photograph, Andrew. Well spotted, and thank you very much indeed for sending it in. And Cat's Whiskers goes international too this week. A postcard from Germany has arrived from Leah Morin, who says, "Today I went to Paderborn and saw a house called the Adam and Eve House," and she sent us a postcard of it. And she even listens to Cat's Whiskers when she's on holiday in Germany, which is great. Thank you very much indeed for that. And finally, Timothy John Davies has sent us 2 pictures of himself on holiday. Thank you for your letter. In his letter, he says he particularly enjoys The Witch's Revenge, and especially the sound effects. He says, "I love it when the baby weasel sneezes." So you can listen out for that in episode 5 of The Witch's Revenge, which comes up this evening, as does Behind the Scenes at Radio 1's Top 40. We thought we'd go and find out how the chart is put together. And last week, of course, I went through a tropical rainforest in central London. This week, we speak to a gentleman who's been to a real rainforest and find out what it's really like. All that after Stanley Bagshaw has had an encounter with a 14-foot wheel.
In Huddersgate, famed for its tram lines, up north where it's boring and slow, Stanley Bagshaw resides with his grandma at number 4 Prince Albert Row. Now, near where Stan lives is a factory, which he frequently happens to pass, that makes sprockets and wheels out of copper and steel, and motorbike parts out of brass. One day, Stanley Bagshaw was walking along by the factory gates when the works engineer said, "Stanley, come here. Will you give me a hand, me old mate? The tea lady's off with the measles, and my tea break is long overdue. Will you keep an eye on the foundry while I put on the pot for a brew?" Stanley, being kind and obliging, said he could spare a moment or two. So George then began to explain to our Stan what he wanted the young lad to do. "You see that big clock in the middle? That shows when the wheel mould is full. Now, here's what you do. When it says 32, you just give this big lever a pull. Now, I'll only be gone for a moment, so don't worry," the engineer said. "Are you sure that you understand what to do?" Our Stanley just nodded his head. Well, at first the job seemed quite exciting, but Stan soon got so tired and bored he just couldn't keep from falling asleep. He fell so fast asleep that he snored. But the hands on the clock kept on turning. 32, 33, 34, past the red danger sign, 38, 39, till the mould wouldn't hold anymore. Bang! Went the mould pumping engine. Our Stanley woke up with a shout, and Cyril and George rushed into the forge to see what the noise was about. "Just look at that clock!" shouted Cyril. "By gummy," the engineer said. "Stanley Bagshaw, have you let it pass 32? Our Stanley just nodded his head. Then George gave a pull on the lever. The machine gave a strange clunking sound. Then, what a surprise! "Just look at the size!" shouted George. It's a wheel near 14 foot round. Well, this bicycle wheel was enormous. What the heck shall we do? Cyril cried. Said George, it's quite clear that we can't leave it here. So they all pushed the big wheel outside. Mind the slope by the door, said our Stanley, but his cry of alarm was too late. They pushed it too hard. It rolled into the yard and out of the factory gate. Right down the middle of Pump Street it went, closely followed by Cyril and Stan. It rolled on down into Hudder's Gate, and that's when the real fun began. Ron Miller was laying some concrete and had just smoothed it out nice and flat, when the runaway wheel knocked him head over heels right into the concrete. Splat! It rolled on past Rowbottom's cake shop and gave Charlie Clegg such a chase, he ran all through the town, knocked a fat policeman down and squashed a cream tart in his face. The wheel rolled on through the market. By gum, Cyril cried, what a lark! It rolled down the hill past the gasworks and turned into Hudder's Gate Park. In the park, Maurice Ratcliffe was fishing, sitting there half asleep on his stool. When he saw the big wheel, he let out a squeal, jumped up, and fell into the pool. The wheel rolled into the playground. Cried Stanley, hey, that's not allowed. It rolled to the top of the playground slide and disappeared into the clouds. Well, that's very odd, muttered Cyril. It's perhaps just as well, said our Stan. It must be quite near my tea time. I'd better get home to me gran. Have you had a nice time, Stan? Said Grandma, when our Stan got back home for his tea. I've just been a run around Hudder's Gate, Gran. Nothing much ever happens to me. We interrupt this programme of really boring Transylvanian manglehorn music to bring you a news flash. An unidentified flying object has been sighted over the northern town of Hudder's Gate. Scientists believe it could be a spacecraft from the distant planet of Sprocatella Spocalaria. Eyewitnesses describe the UFO as looking rather like a 14-foot bicycle wheel.
I don't think Stanley Bagshaw will fall asleep again too quickly, do you? And next week, something I'm really looking forward to. Bogeyland's most famous bogey man, Fungus, will be joining us to tell us what life is like in Bogeyland. Ugh. Last week, you may remember, I went through a tropical rainforest. Or at least, I went through a tropical rainforest tunnel which had been set up at the Natural History Museum in London. Now, it was a great experience, but while I was there, I was wondering to myself, is this what a tropical rainforest is really like? Well, a gentleman called Neil Shenton has been actively working to save the rainforests. He's been educating people as to how important they are, and in doing so, he has been to a real rainforest. So he seemed a very well qualified person to tell me.
How tall is a rainforest? Well, you get layers in a rainforest, and you get the floor shrub layer, then you get the understory, which are the trees that sit just under the canopy.
Which is what, 10 feet, 20 feet?
No, you probably go up to 80 feet in some cases. And then you get the canopy itself, and then you get the really spectacular trees, which are the emergence, because there's a lot of competition for light and the canopy. And some trees have solved that problem by bursting through the canopy and sitting above it. And those emergents, as they're called, are spectacular in height. I mean, higher than the Nelson's Column in Trafalgar Square, for instance, which is a fair height to behold, I can assure you.
If there's a canopy, does it mean that the forest floor is quite dark?
It does, yes, and in fact in a real rainforest you probably wouldn't see the starlight coming through the canopy like you can here. The leaves and the crowns of the trees, they link together very tightly, and so the floor of the forest is really very dark. And it's only when a tree gets very old and suddenly crashes to the ground and opens up a hole in the canopy that sunlight or starlight can shine through. And when the sunlight shines through and hits the floor of the forest, all the seedlings that have been lying there for sometimes tens of 20 years or so suddenly sprout into life, and a fantastic fight begins between all the seedlings to reach the light. And some of them succeed and some of them don't. And those that do become the next trees of the forest.
It is very noisy, isn't it?
Yes, the rainforest is quite a noisy place, but it depends on at what time of day it is. At night time, which is what time it is now in the forest, it's actually sometimes the noisiest, because during the day it's so hot, all the animals are tired and they go and find some cool shelter somewhere.
How hot is so hot-ish?
It's a bit like being in a bathroom with central heating after a bath. So yeah, that's how hot it is. And there's no wind, you see. It's as still. There's no wind whatsoever.
It really is a fascinating place. And for a special Cat's Whiskers competition this week, we have several Save the Rainforest t-shirts to give away. Lots of huge, colourful posters as well, all provided by Living Earth. What we'd like you to do is paint a word picture of what it might be like to be in a tropical rainforest. Think about the colours. Think about the sounds you might hear. What about the smells? What about the creatures that might be there? Would it be dark? Would it be light? Would you be frightened? What might it be like to be in a tropical rainforest? A word picture or poem, please, to the usual Cat's Whiskers address. And I look forward to reading your entry. Birthday list time. And I thought this might be an appropriate word this week. F-O-R-E-S-T. Cat's Whiskers Club members celebrating a birthday this week are Joanna Kennedy, Rory Griffiths, Philip Freed, Claire Ashworth, Jenny Goodman, Alyssa Watts, Emily Nisbet, Hazel Macmillan, Nicholas Bonner and Wendy Lister. Gareth Nichols, Katie Beck, Kate Tuer, Stephen Edmondson, Marcin Narozanski, Rose Wilshire and Catherine Bradshaw. Happy birthday to Louise Bushnell, Fiona Lum, Sian Matthias, David Robertson, Douglas Field, Catherine Keeling and Joe Legg. Also celebrating this week are Daniel McCracken-Hewson, Benjamin Allen, R.V. Silver, Anne-Marie Copeman, James Pelly, Abigail Cadigan, Charles Smith, Elspeth Smith, Sophia Skleparis, Rachel Seymour and Hannah Ewing. Nicholas Kabegian has a birthday this week, as does Laura Coe, Nuella Bruff, Neil Mackay, Timothy Weisberg, Claire Knight, Hannah Belton and Andrew Hughes. And finally, Fiona Birch, Mark Monkman and Helen Blackley. Happy birthday to everybody celebrating this week from all of us on Cat's Whiskers. T-shirt time now, of course, so Purlitzer, do your stuff. 1 4 9 1 5 3 And my Purlitzer tells me that that is the membership number of Nuella Bruff. Happy birthday, Nuella, celebrating your 9th birthday on the 14th of March. A Cat's Whiskers t-shirt in the post to you. You share your birthday with Michael Caine, the actor, and Jasper Carrott, the comedian, and also celebrating this week, actress, recently turned pop star, Liza Minnelli.
Radio 1, brand new UK Top 40. Radio 1 FM.
Just before you switched on to Cat's Whiskers this evening, you may very well have been listening to the Top 40 on Radio 1, hosted, of course, by Bruno Brooks. But how do you think the Top 40 is put together? Well, even after several years in the pop music business, I really don't know either. So last week, I went to find out.
Number 1.
Tank fly, boss walk, jam, nitty gritty. You're listening to the boy from the big bad city. This is Jam Hot. This is Jam Hot.
When you walk into a record shop and you look up on the wall and it says there, Gallup Top 40, how on earth do you think that's compiled? Do you think like the man sits behind the desk in the record shop and makes it up? No. Today we're going to find out exactly how the Gallup Top 40 is compiled. We're going to follow a single from purchase right the way through to the chart on Sunday afternoon with Bruno Brooks. First decision is which single to buy. How about this? Well, it was number 1 last week, it might be number 1 this week. Beats International and Dub Be Good To Me. So the next thing we've got to do is buy it. How much? Hang on a second. Hang it. There you go. Oh, you forgot the most important bit. Wipe the debris across it. But what happens next? So we've come now from the record shop to the home of the chart, if you like, to Gallup in London, and we're with John Pinder, who's the chart manager. John, what happens now? I've bought my single and it's gone beep. What happens now?
Right, well, every record carries its own unique barcode.
So that's a black and white stripy thing?
That's right. Now, the Epson computer that we put in the shops stores that barcode information, and then our mainframe dials out to all the computers. So we've done that with every record that's gone into a computer around the country, and now we're ready to process the chart.
Do you get every record that's bought?
We have a sample of 1 in 4 record shops, so we get around a quarter of the sales, which is carefully balanced to represent the sales across the whole country.
There are, of course, other charts around. What advantages are there for having the Gallup chart right up to Saturday, right up to 10 o'clock Saturday night?
Saturday's the biggest day of the week in terms of record sales. If you can pull those sales into the chart, you've got a current chart. What other charts do is they cut off earlier in the week, so they won't have the crucial weekend sales in. So that makes them by nature more out of date.
So now at this late stage on a Sunday afternoon, you and I know what the chart is, but presumably Bruno Brooks and his producer don't as yet know. So how do you get it to him?
Well, we're going to fax it across now. It's heading for 4 o'clock, so we fax it over to Bruno.
Can I have a look?
Okay,
show me.
Hold on 1
show me
second.
the chart.
Well, Beats International's still there at number 1, the second week running.
Right, where's the fax machine? We'll have to go and fax it away.
Okay, here we go.
We've zipped across London in a fast car from the offices of Gallup to Radio 1, and I'm with Joanne now, who is the producer of the chart show. Joanne, what happens from when you receive the chart fax? What happens between then and 5 o'clock?
Well, basically what I do with the PA is we sit down together and look at the new entries and the movements in the chart and make a note of those and make sure that we've got all the records, first of all. Obviously,
fairly obviously,
that's
yeah.
important. So I've now got the chart in front of me for the first time, and I'm just having a look down and seeing what's been happening. There seem to be quite a few new entries. It has a list on one side of what was in the chart last week and the positions they were at. So I'm just going to go down and try and work out in my head what the movement is, which for me is quite difficult because I was never very mathematically bent. Right.
1FM, Bruno Brooks.
We've been to Gallup, we've seen the charts being compiled, we've spoken to the producer of the Top 40, now to the host of Europe's most listened to radio programme, Bruno Brooks. How many listeners, do you think?
That's difficult to say, but I'd say somewhere in the region of about 8 million these days.
Do you get nervous then? Because it's probably Radio 1's premiere show, isn't it?
I don't get nervous. Obviously, the first time I did it, I was very nervous because it's one of those programmes you can't afford to make a mistake. I mean, so many people's ears are pinned back, not just for the effect of the Top 40, but also for the, for the information. And I would get more nervous standing up in front of 8 people than I would broadcasting to 8 million people.
Because you can't see them, is that what it is?
Yeah,
do it
probably.
for the people through the glass.
Probably so.
Did you listen to the chart when you were a kid?
Every week without fail.
Were you listening on Tuesdays when it used to go on Tuesdays, or do you listen on a Sunday afternoon like I did?
Well, I used to listen to both. I've got to say that, haven't
See
I?
if it changed.
But Tuesday was the all-important day. I remember Johnny Walker was the man that used to reveal the chart on a Tuesday lunchtime. It was just great listening.
Have you ever made any mistakes?
You mean live on air?
Yeah. Have you ever, like...
On the top 40?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. I made one grave mistake one particular Sunday.
What?
When I played the number 1 record before playing the number 2 record. Now, that you can imagine was very embarrassing because I was 3 minutes short. I mean, I'd played the number 1 and I had to admit there and then that I'd played the wrong record. That's Britain's number 1 this week. It's a new number 1, but of course we've missed one out, so here's number 2.
What about the records that are played and the records that aren't played? Because you don't squeeze 40 records into 2 hours, do you?
I remember at one time, the policy was to play a bit of every record in the top 40. And then you had the obvious complaint from people saying, well, you know, I like that record at number 27, but you only played 2 minutes of it. Why can't you play it all? So we decided to play the new entries, obviously. They're very important because they're new records in the chart. We feel that it's very important to play the top 20 guaranteed, if we can. And obviously the number 1 in the right order. I mean, there might be a chart one week where, for instance, you've got 13 new entries, 12 climbers. You want to play the whole top 20. Well, you can start to work it out for yourself. You can't play them all.
Can't fit them all in.
So what are the priorities? Well, they become obvious from there on, so that's what we do. We would play a climber before we play one going down.
It's very good of you to talk to us. I won't keep you anymore because I'm looking at the clock on the wall here in the studio at Radio 1 and it's about time you got yourself prepared for the chart. So Bruno Brooks, thanks very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Radio 1, brand new UK Top 40.
Good afternoon, it's exactly 5 o'clock and this is Bruno Brooks, and together we're all about to discover exactly how the brand new singles chart is shaping up, except no substitute, the official Gallup Top...
So now you know how the top 40 is put together. Thanks to everyone at Gallup and everyone at Radio 1 for letting us look behind the scenes. Now on Cat's Whiskers, episode 5 of The Witch's Revenge.
Philip and Baby B have been attacked by Oyen the witch as they flew on the magic kite. They crashed to the ground and hid in a hollow log till nightfall. In a rage, Oyen sets fire to the forest around them.
Burn trees!
That was close. Ow, ow, ow. This part stings my whiskers. Let's run for it like we did last time, Flippy.
We can't. The fire is all around us, and Oyen is waiting.
The sheep. They're very frightened. Over this way, sheep. This way.
Oh, the silly things. They wouldn't listen, would they? Come back inside the log, Baby B.
I bet they're lost in the fire. Oh, poor sheep. I wish I'd never flown in the kite. This log's going to catch fire with us inside. Barbecue Baby B. Oh, dear.
Now don't cry. I'll think of something.
Well?
I'm still thinking. Keep still. You're rocking the log with all your wriggling. Hey, that's it. The river's down there, isn't it? If we sway together, we might move the log, get it turning, and roll right through the fire to the river.
What?
Have you got a better idea?
After 3. 1.
2, 3. Sway. And again. It's moving. Again. We're off. Hang on.
I'm all upside down and inside down.
As long as we keep it moving, we won't catch fire.
Oh!
Look at the flames. Can't be far now. The river is just... last, beaver towers.
Can't see anyone. Open up, it's us!
Shh, not so loud. Ian is still around. God, look at the glow in the sky. She's burning everything. She must be furious that we got away.
Who is it?
Philip and Baby B! Lower the drawbridge!
And hurry up, we're starving!
I'll be glad to get out of these wet clothes.
Ian!
No, it's not. Look!
Hurrah, they're staying! You've all got sooty faces now. Serve you right.
And your wool is singed. Come on, sheep. Maybe you'll listen next time.
Now, come on, you two. You'd better get some sleep. As for you, Edgar, I'm astonished you let them out on that kite in the first place.
It was my fault. I insisted we went up. It was scary, but it was exciting too.
Especially the rolling log. My head's still going round. Really exciting.
That's the spirit, young'uns. Oh, if I wasn't such an old duffer, I'd have gone with you. Nothing like a bit of adventure, eh?
Adventure, indeed.
Oh, to listen to Mrs. Badger, you wouldn't think she'd climb the highest mountain on the island by herself, would you? Or gone down the deepest caves?
Oh, away with you, man. I was young and foolish then. Mountains, indeed.
She's as proud of you as me, deep down. Well, I'm off to my workshop to find a spell that will put out that fire.
Is it still burning?
Yes. Ian must be in such a rage because you've escaped.
We're not afraid of Ian anymore. I could beat her on my own if I had to.
And asleep, huh? Or I really will be in trouble with Mrs. Badger.
Oh, first of all, it's the smoke. Then I get soaking wet. Oh, dearie me. Oh, yes, your gravy boat. Your ladyship, here I am.
My cloak needs cleaning. See to it.
Oh, yes, your cloakship.
Just look at that rain. That stupid Edgar will have worked a spell. I hate rain.
Yes, it put out the fire.
What?
Oh, balls the potty. Pity. Do you think the boy and Baby B were burned up? Only I would like to go home now to my mum and dad. My dad...
Oh, silence, you quivering creature! No, those two are still alive. I can sense it. Curse this rain. I shall have to break his spell. Fetch my ancient magic book.
At once, your magic ship. It's ever so big, though. I shouldn't be carrying heavy books. It's not in my condition.
How's the map coming along, Philip?
Nearly finished. Mr. Stripe let me off school to complete it.
Oh, yes, that's very professional. Baby B isn't in school either. I thought he might be with you.
Oh, he was in the courtyard with Nick Hedgehog, bragging about how he'd beaten off Ian and how he'll catch her the next time.
That sounds like my grandson. Mr. Stripe will not be pleased.
Grandpa Edgar? What happened to all the mums and dads?
Captured by Ian. It left me and Mrs. Badger to look after all these young'uns. But one day we'll all be together again, I'm sure.
Did you magic the rain to put out the fire?
Yes. Trouble is, it's only meant to last for an hour. Ian won't be happy. She hates water, but I have a horrible feeling she is going to use it against you.
What do you mean?
Earth, air, fire, and water. She's using the 4 elements, the oldest magic there is. Everything is made from them, very powerful. First attack was made at your home through the tunnel she made in the earth.
The second was in the air when we were on the kite, and then there was the fire in the forest.
Which leaves water. Her final chance to destroy you before her master destroys her.
Why does she hate water?
All witches fear it. It can kill them, but she's no choice. Somehow she will use it, I'm sure, against you. Now what we have to do...
What?
Oh, Edgar! Baby B is missing! I've looked everywhere
That's
for
no
him.
reason to get so upset. I'm sure
No,
you'll
you don't understand. He's gone off with Nick Hedgehog. Something to do with finding iron. And they've gone in a boat.
Water? Oh, no.
Will Oyen's final spell, the water spell, succeed? Find out next week in the last episode of The Witch's Revenge. Also next week, Fungus the Bogeyman will be here to tell us what life is really like in Bogeyland, and we've a special Fungus the Bogeyman competition as well, and Bill Oddie will be reading the winning story in the Fast Forward Fiction competition. Until then, have a good week and join me next Sunday. Bye-bye.
The Cat's Whiskers address is P.O. Box 40, Manchester M61FR. The programme was presented by Andy Crane. Stanley Bagshaw on the 14-foot wheel by Bob Wilson was read by Paul Copley. The Witch's Revenge by Nigel Hinton was adapted by Neil Shenton and directed by Caroline Smith. Taking part were Elizabeth Mansfield, Marc Murphy, Marlene Sidaway, David King, John Bramwell, David Ross and James Greene. The researcher was Liz Roberts, and the programme was produced in Manchester by Mary Kalemkerian.